Back to Capitol Hill, where House Minority Speaker Hakeem Jeffries is still speaking on the House floor. He's got an attempt there to try to delay lawmakers from voting on President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. He started speaking just before 5 a.m. Eastern time. He's kept going without any breaks. Now, before we go to what he has had to say so far, just want to put this into context. This is a procedure, something known as the Magic Minute. Now, if you want to keep track of these things, Kevin McCarthy holds the current record for a leadership magic minute. He clocked in at 8 hours and 32 minutes. That was back in 2021 during the Build Back Better vote. Well, Jeffries, he started a lot earlier, understanding that he will speak until about 1:26 Eastern or past that. If he goes past 1:26 p.m. Eastern, he will beat McCarthy's record. Here's a listen to what he's had to say, beating that clock.
We're going to stand up for every single veteran in this great country and make sure that the veterans of the United States of America are treated with the dignity and respect that you deserve. Because what's happening in this country, an all-out assault on law-abiding immigrant families, is unconscionable, unacceptable, and it's un-American. Seems to me that every other law enforcement professional in the United States of America has to disclose their identity in a way that is identifiable. These masks need to come down.
Power the microphone during that magic minute, now stretching into the hours for Hakeem Jeffries. We want to bring in CBS News political reporter Zach Hudak. Any indication on how much longer he will go? I think a lot of people think he's going to beat that last record.
Reed, I think it is safe to assume or infer at this point that he is going to at least beat that record, which will be happening in about a half an hour here. I was in the chamber when Kevin McCarthy was doing this very thing on another BBB, the Build Back Better bill under President Joe Biden in 2021. And we saw it happen with Speaker Nancy Pelosi in 2018 with DACA. What this is really doing is it's an opportunity for the minority party to try to take some control of a situation that they are frankly losing. This is a bill filled with President Trump's agenda, and it is going to pass at this point. The fact that it got through the procedural vote last night, that enough Republicans came over, all but one, we can pretty much assume that it will get through ahead of the July 4th deadline. But what this allows Hakeem Jeffries to do is to point out Republicans in battleground districts where they're going to have a difficult time explaining this vote to their constituents, explaining cuts in Medicaid, cuts to hospital funding, things like that. So this is sort of a last-ditched effort to turn this into a messaging win for Democrats, even though it's a legislative loss.
Right. It really seems like we are watching, in addition to a delay, some agenda setting here that arguably both parties will be doing on the campaign trail and when they go back to their districts to talk to the people who gave them the keys to their offices there in Washington, D.C. How are you feeling lawmakers are feeling about what looks to be an eventuality here?
I think that Democrats are upset about it, but they see this as an opportunity where they can really hammer away in those battleground districts and hopefully come midterms make some victories and regain control of the House. Republicans, meanwhile, are for the most part celebrating. Even the Republicans who previously opposed this have something to celebrate because they've been talking about promises that President Trump made to them on the phone overnight, other things he'll support. So in a lot of ways, for both sides, this is a victory. It gives a rallying cry for Democrats and a legitimate legislative victory for Republicans, as well as for the Republicans who weren't so happy about it legislatively. It gives them some extra chips for some of their pet projects to have the President of the United States with the bully pulpit willing to support their initiatives.
Well, for right now, the pulpit belongs to Hakeem Jeffries, stretching that magic minute, as it's called, in what looks to be the last mile of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill before it gets signed by President Donald Trump. Zach Hudak, thank you so much for taking notes of history today, live from our nation's capital.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, so let's hop over to the White House now and CBS News reporter Willie James Inman. Willie, how is the White House reacting to what's going on with Democrats at this hour?
Hey there, Reed. Well, for the most part, the president has been posting about the record jobs numbers, positive job numbers, and certainly good news for the economy this morning. He also posted about egg prices. And we have seen the president over the past day or so really try to use not only his social media account, but those in-person conversations, those phone conversations to try to compel Republicans to support this legislation. Just want to bring up a few of the Truth Social posts that we have seen the president put out there in the past 24 hours, essentially calling this an easy vote and saying that it's going to cost you vote. There he's talking about it's the largest tax cut in history, and it's a booming economy versus the biggest increase in history in terms of tax increase on Americans across this nation. We of course know that this bill includes an extension of those 2017 Trump era tax cuts, and the president says, as you see there on your screen, he says for Republicans this should be an easy vote, calling it ridiculous. This post coming at 12:45 a.m. as we saw that process playing out in the House. Remember how we got here, Reed. It was a slim vote in the Senate. Before that, a slim vote, that slim margin vote in the House. Now it's back at the House. The president can't afford to lose only a few votes. If a few votes, I should say, would prevent this bill from being passed in the House and from him having that deadline that he has set for July 4th. And the White House is already making plans for a signing ceremony here at the White House. An official tells us that the president will likely sign this at 5 p.m. tomorrow at a ceremony here at the White House. So they're already making plans for this to move forward, for the president to sign this into law, and for that July 4th deadline to be, in fact, become history, as we see Hakeem Jeffries there, the minority leader in the House, essentially stall this vote, whereas Democrats really don't have much power in this situation, as Zach mentioned.
All right, and Hakeem Jeffries, by the way, will make that record if he keeps speaking for another 20, maybe 21 minutes. As soon as we hit that mark, if we hit that mark here on CBS News 24/7, we will bring it to you. But while I have you, Willie, we're also mindful that the president is going to where a lot of these representatives will have to go back to, and that is the heartland. Understanding he is kicking off a celebration of America's 250th birthday. Talk to us about the timing of this visit with the budget bill as it is progressing right now.
Yeah, that's right. The president expected to make this appearance in Iowa later tonight. He's going to not only tout the legislation that's making its way through his one big beautiful bill, as he calls it, he's going to also give what officials describe as a campaign style speech. He's going to talk about, as you mentioned, America's 250th initiative to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the creation of the United States next year, of course. And he'll outline plans for what a White House official described as a great American state fair, which is something that he mentioned during his presidential campaign in 2024. Not too many specifics on what that could mean, but still, nonetheless, the president going to the heartland, essentially where a lot of these political campaigns start, there in Iowa. A lot of those presidential campaigns start there, so the president making that visit tonight, giving these announcements, but also likely a celebration, a celebratory speech that the president will give in terms of his major milestone legislative accomplishment for the second part, his second term in office, Reed.